Well, it's the top of the hour. I'm going to wait maybe a couple more minutes to see if a few more come in, and I don't want to go beyond 2 more minutes because I want to give our panelists as much time as possible.
Can everyone see my screen okay?
We can.
Yes. I know that's not a couple of minutes, but I just want to make sure I give you panelists enough time. So I am going to get started. So everyone, I'm Cheryl Davis. I am the moderator for our session, a part of the OET team at Peralta. So thank you so much for joining this session. It's called Equity and Inclusion, Challenges and Opportunities with Online CTE Instruction. We're using automated Zoom captions during the live event, and we will edit the recording transcripts before we share them with you so that they're more accurate once the recording is done. At the bottom of the Zoom window, you will see a closed caption button. If you'd like to use this feature, select closed caption, then choose show subtitle, view full transcript, or change the subtitle settings. Please pose your questions using the chat function and we'll moderate and discuss them with our panelists. Towards the end of the hour, we'll share how we can continue the conversation online and share some additional resources to support your teaching. So now I'd like to hand the microphone over to our presenters. They are Fred Lokken, Brittany Hochstaetter, Amanda Briggs, and Andrea Taylor. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Cheryl, and thank you for having us. Just a little bit about ITC. So again, my name is Andrea Taylor. I'm the Executive Director for ITC, the Instructional Technology Council. Thank you for joining our session. ITC is a leader in advancing distance education. Our mission is simply to provide exceptional leadership, professional development, and higher education to our network of e-learning practitioners. We track federal legislation that will affect distance learning. And of course, we've seen a huge example of that with the CARES funding over this past year. We hold 2 annual professional development meetings, normally in person, but again, pivot. We support research and provide a forum for members to just share their expertise and materials. Our members are primarily single community colleges and multi-campus districts. We also do have regional and statewide systems of community technical and two-year colleges. So if you are interested in joining ITC or wondering if your college is already a member, I will pop my email address into the chat. And then just our panel again. And then Shelley and Pat are here in spirit today. So just so you know that. And then I'm actually gonna hand it off to Amanda.
Thanks so much, Andrea. So hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Briggs. I'm a senior research associate at the Urban Institute. And for those of you who might not be familiar with Urban, we're a nonprofit research organization that's based in Washington, D.C., and we do a lot of different work, but the work that I'll be talking about today is focused on post-secondary education and CTE. So I just wanted to share a little bit about a recent grant that we've launched called the CTE CoLab, which is a collaboration that's funded by the ECMC Foundation and led by the Urban Institute in partnership with our wonderful colleagues at the Instructional Technology Council, World Education, Inc., the National Council for Workforce Education, the Office of Community College Research and Leadership, and the National Coalition of Advanced Technology Centers. So this is a 2.5-year grant where we will be supporting a college community of practice of up to 15 community and technical colleges with the goal of enhancing equity-centered approaches to online teaching and learning. And we've asked colleges to apply to identify a focused credit-bearing CTE program when they applied for the grant. And then over the course of the project, we'll be developing and sharing resources with the colleges and the field to improve education and career outcomes in online CTE programming. In terms of where we are with the initiative to date, so colleges have already applied to join the community of practice, and selected college programs will receive grant funding, coaching, and research-informed technical assistance from our coalition to support their participation in a 2-year engagement. So we'll be making a public announcement of the colleges that were selected by early June. and the project will run through the end of April 2023. And so we just wanted to let everyone that was joining us today and that will be watching this later in the recording, that this effort was going on, to be aware that it was happening, and to feel free to contact us with any follow-up questions. We're really excited about it, and I think it's a really concrete opportunity to partner with colleges who have shifted their programming online to learn more about what they're doing to promote equitable access and outcomes for all students. And we're really excited to share what we learn with the field and work with our partners here on the call today. So with that, I will turn it over to the ITC committee, unless there's anything that I might have missed. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much, Amanda. And I wanted to just have a bit of a conversation with those who are attending today. Very happy that you've joined us. As Amanda described, this is a remarkable coalition, a remarkable partnership. And it brings together, it's like a major intersection of thinking and ideas and energy, so that the grant process so far, I think for all of the organizations involved, has been quite enlightening. I think it's challenging us to think more broadly and to understand how these lines do intersect. And within that context, we've been meeting on a very regular basis to sort of flesh out details. There are some 15 community colleges that will be the leaders of this relationship, and we will be working very closely with those 15 community colleges once they've been identified. But we wanted to be a part of this conference, in part hoping to draw from your experience, your expertise. We purposely made sure that you understood that we were talking about CTE. So we have three interesting layers to this. First, the notion of online learning, which has been really tested during the recent pandemic. For us in online learning, we've been concerned because some of what has gone on in the name of online learning has frankly given us a bad name, and it's undeserved. For any of the campuses, and it describes all of the California institutions, of course, and elsewhere in the country. Most of us have had organized efforts at online learning. We have a structure. We understand what produces quality instruction. We know what promotes the best kind of student success. This is something that we've been doing now since the late 90s. We have some wind under our sails in understanding what functions as best practices there. A challenge that's been out there, of course, has been the layering on of online learning with CTE. CTE is, as the slide indicates, it's an interesting set of careers. Many of us, I think, are surprised when we wade into the new CTE of the 2020 and beyond, because there just seem to be more fields that are brought into this area. And on our campuses, we know the Perkins funding that goes on. We recognize that during the pandemic, many of these were the hands-on classes that really felt they had to somehow still be in the classroom. So there is a reluctance for them to do online. They really don't think they've got content that communicates what is learned in the face-to-face hands-on experience that we've offered on our campuses over the years. So we know that there's an issue there right out the bat of CTE and online. And yet during the pandemic, many CTE programs have moved online out of necessity, aspects of their programs. And in this conversation that we've had under the grant with two major organizations that are involved in workforce development, we've learned from them firsthand that the industry has been stepping up in many of the fields, producing very useful videos that are how-to videos that are designed to be used in an online CTE environment. So we know that real progress has been made, has been accelerated during the pandemic, and is available now as we launch this grant and look at this layering of online learning best practices with CTE best practices. And then the third element, obviously for purposes of this conference, is the equity and inclusion element. This is something that we first benefit. The Urban Institute has produced, as of March of this year, an excellent report that we strongly encourage anyone to spend some time with. It is an outstanding database tour de force looking at the issue of equity and inclusion in CTE. Very, very focused. This is just an incredible gift because it gives us that national perspective of where we are and where we aren't. on these elements, and especially the challenges of equity and inclusion in the instruction and in the online learning environment. And so we have a Google Doc, and a link for that article has been listed. If you don't find it, we have our contact information at the end of this session. We'd be happy if you contact any of us. We'll be happy to make sure that you find that. But it has to be the easiest Google search. Simply, if you just put in Urban Institute CTE, it does come up immediately, and it's fantastic. But it lets us know that there are both challenges and opportunities, that there is some progress that's been made, and there is real progress yet to make. And so if we could change or shift the slide. Andrea is going to do that. We have, and then to the next slide, we have a number of videos. They're just very brief videos, but Andrea, if we could go through the videos, and I'd kind of like to talk on the other side of that. The first, actually, Andrea, is an article on community colleges and minorities. Excellent article. Would highly recommend that you
with fewer men of color graduating at the community college level, there's a local effort underway to find out why and offer solutions. The project is called the Minority Male Community College Collaborative. Here with the details is co-director of the program, Luke Wood. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, Luke, what does your research reveal as to why men of color are having issues in community college?
Okay. Well, we've partnered with 40 community colleges in 8 states to really investigate what are the factors that influence their success. And we really kind of broken it down into 2 main areas. The first area focuses on what we call campus ethos. That's the environment and conditions that are created at the college that make students feel like they're validated, like you belong, you can succeed, I believe in you, where it makes them feel like they belong at the institution. It makes them feel like they can engage in the classroom like faculty members want them to do so. So that's one set of factors that we've seen has been really important. The other side really deals with masculinity. When we talk about men of color, sometimes we forget that they're men. Men sometimes are less likely to seek out help. And if you're less likely to do so, you may be less likely to meet with a faculty member, go to academic advising, go to tutoring. And so we consider both of those parts.
How were you able to get this data?
So what we do is we survey men in community colleges, all men across the board, who are trying to earn a certificate, degree, or transfer.
And as far as specifics, did you interview them? Did you have a survey?
Well, in terms of our most recent study, which deals with faculty members, we've taken data from our survey of men. We've also done interviews with faculty members who are leaders in serving men of color. And we've also done interviews with men of color and taken narratives from those who have been successful in transferring from a 2-year college to a 4-year college.
Are some of these challenges specific to minority men in general, or do they actually differ between the different races?
That's a great question. Actually, what we've seen is that there's a lot of difference between groups. We look at differences between Black students in terms of what affects their success, and Latino students and Asian American students, broken down into several groups. One of the groups that we're really concerned about is Southeast Asian men, Hmong, Cambodian, Laotian men, who oftentimes have experiences and outcomes on par with that of other men of color.
What are some of the key recommendations as far as improving the odds for either this specific group or for all men of color in the community college level?
Okay. Well, one of the recommendations really deals with developing faculty members. We really believe that faculty members must be taught how to engage with men of color in the classroom. And a lot of it deals with the relationships themselves, whether men of color feel like they can trust that faculty member. So before even we can talk about what's good teaching, we have to talk about how do you build relationships with those men. The next part we talk about deals with what we call early alert systems. So that's when you have a student who is missing a couple classes or falls behind in a couple of assignments. There should be an automatic trigger that then lets the faculty member know, hey, this student isn't doing well. I might need to send them to support services on campus, and then helping make those linkages between the student and those services.
And I understand some of your recommendations actually start way before that and trying to increase the success of minority men in college. How early should they start?
Cradle. You know, we look a lot at early childhood education because that's actually where the gaps really begin. These men early on are taught by teachers who are primarily white and female. So they're taught that school early on is a domain.
So you're talking kindergarten, grade school, all the way through.
Preschool, kindergarten, grade school, they're taught primarily by white women. And as a result, they view the structure of power in the classroom as one of that belonging to white women. Therefore, if they engage in the classroom in some ways, they can be negating their own identity. So think about how we can create a more of a pipeline of teachers who are men of color, who are also women and women of color. We want to have a diverse pipeline of teachers so that students see people who look like them in the classroom.
How will these recommendations and this data that you found actually fit into the national initiative of My Brother's Keeper?
Yeah, well, recently the Obama administration released the My Brother's Keeper initiative, and what they've done is they have 4 of their 6 main points look at what can we do in education to improve outcomes for boys and men of color. We believe that our work directly informs that initiative in that we're saying to policymakers, these are some things that you can do that can help improve outcomes for these men. And some of them are simple. And the benefit is a lot of the recommendations that we have are things that not only benefit men of color, but they benefit all students, because if you can affect those students most on the margin, you can affect everyone.
So we are almost out of time, so I have to end on this one. But if you can name 1 or 2 of those recommendations that you say would benefit everyone.
Okay. One would be starting student equity plans. So when a college identifies outcome gaps between different students, creating and putting plans of action in place that can help you to serve those students better. Again, creating early warning systems and early alert systems to help identify students and other practices.
All right, researcher Luke Wood, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Fred, would you like to go to the next round of videos?
Sure.
So my name is Wes Evans. I run the HVAC program here for TMCC. And one of the ways that I help a student, kind of interesting little situation we had was a student from China had come here to take the HVAC program. And with that, what I had done to help him is I downloaded a Google app called, what was it called? Translate. And what I would do is I would watch and look at him to see if he understood what I was talking about. If he didn't, then I would pull that app up, I would talk into that app, and it would translate to Chinese, so then I could play it back for him so he would understand what I was actually talking about. And we use that both for me teaching him and him teaching me. So it was quite interesting, but it was a very helpful tool.
And then we just have one other brief faculty video.
Did have a student one time that did have problems with colors and wiring diagrams and following wiring diagrams. He learned to use all the positions of the wires, and then whatever color he saw is what he would match up to what the colors were, because he couldn't see reds, and light yellows were really a problem for them. And then he just went through and was able to do all the work and follow the instructions and be able to trace out wires and do all the repairs.
Okay. So thank you, Andrea, for those. In essence, we wanted to have some perspectives from faculties on the front line. As we've been exploring this topic, the challenge, especially in CTE, is that it's a different nature of education than I think all of us have kind of prepped on our campuses for. There's one thing when it's kind of very traditional, but these classes start with often more part-time faculty than full-time faculty. The training that the part-time faculty have been exposed to is usually substantially less. They neither participate in the campus environment like the full-timers do, nor do they get this type of training in their immediate workplace. Again, we tend to hire in CTE people that are in the field. This is one of the most powerful things about many of our CTE instructors is that they're real world. They're actually working in that environment. They're making the learning real. But they're often lacking a lot of the exposure and context that our full-time colleagues in most community colleges really struggle with this. They don't get the training to the part-timers that they need. The other reality that we know is that it's not one size fits all. CTE represents a tremendous amount of variety. And from any of you with familiarity with it, you would know, for instance, that the biggest problem in IT and in areas like automotive or diesel or welding is that it's an extremely male-dominated environment. And the issue of is there an effort to recruit women, but then have there been accommodations for women? Is there a sensitivity of understanding how it might be different for a woman? I've been exposed to conversations recently that sort of point out the frustration even of our campuses, right? I mean, we have standard setups for offices and chairs that were all designed for men, not designed for women. And that causes, it can cause a lot of problems, not only in discomfort, but carpal tunnel and other effects, just because the equipment wasn't designed for everyone. It was designed for particularly someone. In other fields, we know that many of our campuses serve an outstanding community. That community is very diverse, and the education that's been developed is not necessarily sensitive to that diversity, to those backgrounds, to those preparations, to cultural practices and foreways. And so it is a very interesting challenge for us to explore under this grant of communicating how to more effectively improve student success. That is the goal of the grant. That is the goal for all of us in any of our courses, whether they're face-to-face or online, whether they're transfer online or they're CTE online. And how do we then wade into that? The two faculty stories are interesting because faculty from all walks of our educational backgrounds at community colleges really want to help our students. They've figured out a number of solutions, but they're dealing with the conscious issues, the ones that, a Chinese student who has a language barrier, someone who's functioning with a colorblind disability. They aren't dealing with their own unconscious bias, nor are they dealing with the unconscious bias that operates amongst their students. I've a story of a woman who was successful in our welding program. And in talking to her, the issue was that, the faculty and the other students, she was the only woman in the class, all others were males. But she found that the interaction was quite different. That she wasn't treated like everyone else in that classroom. There wasn't an effort to reach out to her. She wasn't always taken seriously when she walked into a conversation, nor was she necessarily invited into those conversations. These are the barriers that are happening in our traditional classrooms. And now if we elevate those to online, what type of unconscious bias is operating in that environment? And whether the faculty member obviously is aware or even the students are aware. So our efforts are to sort of ferret out both the challenges and the progress that's been made in CT education to put out the best practices for being able to identify student problems. One of them was basically there in the video that came from that interview, talking about the importance of data, of tracking an individual equity plan, but early alert. He emphasized over and over that you need to engage early. Students are more apt to stop attending, more apt to drop out if they don't feel that they belong, if they aren't feeling welcomed, if they aren't actually even feeling in some way accommodated. And so that is the challenge that we see as we develop the training in support of the grant and in support of the toolbox, is identifying those success areas and identifying strategies in using the tools that exist in an LMS, for instance. It's often easier to track a student online than it is to know what's physically going on in a classroom. And we want to sort of envelop all of that in a way that we can then share with others so that we can short circuit this process and move forward to student success without all of these barriers getting in the way. And so with this, I would actually turn it over now to Amanda, because we'd like to have a discussion with those who are attending today. Did Amanda get voted off the?
Did you mean me, Fred?
Yes, I did. I do apologize. Amanda,
Okay.
what? I was supposed to do something else. Sorry, Brittany. Sorry.
That's okay. I thought, well, maybe you meant Amanda. I was just giving it a beat there. So thank you for joining us. As I think everybody has really set up the table really well for what we wanted to do, and in this next piece of our time, we really wanted to listen to your thoughts and your comments on the subject, centered around 4 main questions. And some of you may have immediate comments or discussion points to these 4 questions. Some of you may want to think it over and then come back and add your feedback later. So there is a Google Doc link in the chat, and also available when you click through the slides on the Padlet link. And you can come back after you've thought through the questions and add your feedback later. Or you can discuss right now, give you both the introverts and the extroverts have an on-ramp to this discussion, okay? So I don't want to put up too much pressure on you right now, but here are the questions that we really want to be listening to your experiences here, because we are in this process of designing training for community colleges that are working in this intersection of equitable online education in this career technical education piece. There's much more training, rubric, more research, more tools in the toolbox for those who are in curriculum, those are in transfer, and there's less out there for those who are in career pathway, technical training, workforce education. So we are in that space, and we really want to tap your experience and tap your knowledge and collect some feedback to go into this work. So this is a great opportunity for you to think through your experiences and your thoughts and kind of share that with us so we can pour that into our work together. The first question is mainly, how do you define equity? What is your viewpoint on that? What is your window into that concept as we work to define that term? The next is, how do we identify underrepresented populations? And then how do we identify barriers towards student success? And fourthly, how could online learning help us to support student success through diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts? So that's a lot to throw at you all at once. But as we're thinking through this and you watch those videos, does anybody want to raise their hand or pop on here and say, okay, this comes to mind, or this story comes to mind, or this is my experience? I'm seeing a little bit in the chat. I'll give you a second to kind of think through that, or click on the link so you can see that. I know for some of you, the screen is blurry. So if you pull up the link directly, it may not be as blurry for you on the screen. I know as Fred was speaking and as I was watching the videos, I reflected a little bit on my own experience. I'm a communication instructor for a community college in North Carolina in Raleigh. And I teach one class in particular, interpersonal communication, which is required for several of the career 2-year programs, both construction management, also cosmetology. I'm sure I'm leaving some out, but some automotive technology, also some heating and air conditioning programs. And so as they work with their customers, or they prepare to work with their customers, they have to learn interpersonal communication. And I was thinking through how those students and those classrooms where we set aside a number of seats for those students who are in career and technical education, I would have so many seats set aside for those students, and then I would have just a few seats set aside for transfer students. And I was thinking back at some of those interactions between those students in my 11, 12 years of community college education, and thinking through, there were moments when there was some bias and there was some inequity and some barriers in the classroom to success. And I didn't always know how to handle that. I didn't always know how to be an advocate and a bridge between all of the cultures and the co-cultural communication that was happening. I had to do a lot of learning through that, of how to get everybody invited to the table of those discussions. Anybody have any thoughts when we say, how could online learning help support student success and prevent barriers through these diversity and equity and inclusion discussions we're having? I'm gonna scroll through because I know we have lots of participants. I don't want to miss any raised hands, or I don't want to miss out if somebody has something they want to say. And also, if you want to put your feedback in the Google Doc, we can share it that way through the discussion. Let's start with this. How do you see career and technical education in an online sense alone? And career and technical education versus transfer and curriculum transfer courses, how do you see those as being separate or different in terms of online education? Do you, in your experience, do you see those as being very separate, or do you see those as being very working together? I mean, I think Fred touched on that a little bit, but for me, they've been very siloed. They've been, one over here, one over here in our college. I don't get as much opportunity to work with those colleagues as I'd like. Andrea, I'm afraid I can't see the screen if they do pull up. Maybe if I pulled up my own screen, I might be able to, but you might have to tell me if something pops onto the screen, because I cannot read it because it's a little too blurry for me too.
We just got a question, Brittany. Which two items are we comparing?
Okay, so there's 4 main questions in the Google Doc. So as far as like a comparison goes, I don't know that we're necessarily comparing, but I guess my question was, if we're talking about career and technical education versus curriculum and transfer, what I mean by that is, in my college, the classes that would transfer to a 4-year university versus those courses that are more going to a certificate. I think if you pull up the slide, that when we talk about what is workforce education, you see programs that fall under that umbrella. That might be more, these are students working towards a certificate, and unfortunately it's too blurry for me. Can you read those, Andrea?
We do have a hand raised. Bob has his hand up.
Okay, you can, maybe if you are able to see him, I'm not able to see him, but we're talking about students who are maybe working in baking and pastry arts or cosmetology, or maybe they're working to get a 1-year certificate in welding. We're not necessarily talking about students who are getting an associate of arts or an associate of science, and then they're going on to get a 4-year degree somewhere else. So it's sort of a different comparison. And so sometimes the online learning aspect is a little bit different in terms of what the requirements are for what does quality online education look like in those two sides. Okay, Mr. Nash.
Thank you, Brittany. Yeah, we are thinking a lot about this at the California Virtual Campus, and just finished a grant program, improving online CTE pathways grant program over the last year and a half, that developed brand new online certificate programs, both credit and non-credit. And here were some of the most common challenges. Faculty would, as Fred noted, come to us with less online teaching skills. In fact, less formal teaching skills in general. They're industry folks by and large, especially the part-timers. So faculty development was a key element for success. And as far as the difference in content being taught, we found, as you might expect, career education often has more psychomotor skills being taught, hands-on activities. That's not that we don't see that in the academic areas, online science labs and or science labs, right? But there's at some point the welder has to use the welding equipment. The graphic artist has to use the equipment to produce the art, and that comes with it a bit of a challenge. Often, not always, but sometimes those skills are better learned with the master teacher present to observe, so bad habits don't become part of the student's learning. So we ended up, for many areas, supporting the production of hybrid programs that if it's a 6-course certificate, perhaps 3 or 4 of those courses were the conceptual principles of the domain, with 2 capstone courses that taught the hands-on, or maybe at course 3 or course 6. So that's how those were supported. And students' incoming skills was also an issue, because the instructors were reporting that many students entering the career programs, as opposed to the academic ones, with no intention to transfer, were often not the most successful academic learners in their high schools. They're more practical, feet on the ground, get stuff done type folk, and book learning is not neither their desire nor their top skill. So just-in-time support and student service support was extremely important, and many of our colleges developed what they called student service hubs. Our learning management system is Canvas, so this hub would be a button in Canvas, so every student would have a button in their course that said student services online, and they would be able to click that and get any service online, tutoring, counseling, the same services that a face-to-face student would get would be provided online in a just-in-time manner. So there's just a few things we noted.
Thank you for sharing that. So that was, and could you share with us just a sampling or a couple of the programs specifically that your virtual campus would offer that would fall under this CTE umbrella?
I will share a link in chat. It was a wide variety of programs. CVC, the California Virtual Campus, is not really a campus. We're a grant-funded organization that helps other California community colleges develop their online programs. So we don't offer courses, they do, but we support them in helping to develop these programs and help bring to bear resources that help improve student success rates. So we had, you might expect, we had a lot of business programs developed, graphic design and audio and video production, surprisingly, although many of those were hybrid programs. We did have some auto tech and things you might consider, well, that's got to be on site, but they created very effective distance learning programs by offering the conceptual learning online, but allowing a student who might not live in your particular area to find an internship or work-based learning at a local employer, where there would be a work experience type course facilitated online, but the student would go to a local employer, and the supervisor and the instructor and the student would conduct and track the learning going on. Okay,
that's great. Thank you for sharing that. And please feel free to add more as you think of it that might be useful to us. And maybe we could I'd love to have your contact information if we have an additional thought or question for you coming out of this, but thank you. And that would be great. And we have another hand raised.
Yes, Evangelina.
Evangelina.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I just wanted to share a couple things. I am a cosmetology instructor. We are currently doing live online training or education, which has really been quite the challenge in some ways, right? Because we're doing labs and we're doing, of course, the lecture portion of the, or the theory portion of the classes as well. Some of the things that I've, challenges is that, sometimes, making sure that you're not assuming that the student is tech savvy. That's been one of the biggest challenges, is just knowing how to navigate through guiding the students with the little things, how to submit an assignment. So what we found, even though we were on Canvas early on, and I was, pretty comfortable. I'm not saying I'm 100% efficient on, teaching online, but there were some things that we discovered as we went into emergency online teaching with our students. Since then, we've created an orientation where we actually do some videos with how to, and then navigating through having extended office hours, and then how to assess a lab class, for example, and how to include the opportunity to really give good feedback in the lab. The students have to submit pictures of their work. And of course, we're seeing some of their work being done when we're live online. However, having extra pictures of their work gives us an opportunity to really see the detail of the work and be able to give a really true feedback, because sometimes you can't see, you have all these little squares on the screen and you can't really see what's being done. So over time, we found different ways to really be a little more effective in making it work. A lot of times it's just trying to get the student comfortable enough to be able to learn how to navigate through, like I mentioned, submission, or even what type of pictures to take for us to be able to give them a good feedback in a sense. I can say that I'd have in the last two classes maybe like 95% retention, which is really good considering that is cosmetology and there's labs and things like that. But I do find it that it's a lot more work, because we were kind of forced to kind of create some of the lessons differently as we went along. So quite a bit of the challenge, but definitely a lot more room to grow. But I can see how effective it can be. We're looking to see, in some schools, they're looking to have maybe a hybrid option where some of the lectures and theories can be offered online, and then having the labs face to face. So I just wanted to share that input for cosmetology, since you mentioned that you've had students that that you teach that are in cosmetology.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Well, I think we could probably go on, and this is what we hoped, is that maybe we could kind of open this discussion, and that it would prompt your thinking, and that the thinking could continue, both maybe on Padlet and also through this Google Docs link that we created and shared with you. And I just really thank you for spending your time with us. I know that there were so many other wonderful sessions that Peralta offered you, and I thank you for giving your time to us. We really appreciate it, and we hope that you will continue to stay in conversation with us on this important topic. And please reach out to ITC and consider joining us as well. We have a great conference coming up in February. We'd love to see you, and it's been a wonderful, wonderful resource to me this year, and I share it with all my colleagues. So thank you, Cheryl. I'll give it back to you.
Thank you so much, panelists. I learned a lot, and I kind of straddle the line between the academic part and the CTE part, because my course is used for both. So I was able to participate in the grant that Mr. Nash mentioned earlier. Thank you all for participating. I have included the link to our Padlet, and we'd love to continue the conversation, because there's just so much that we can learn from each other. So again, I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference, and thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you all again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.